Calgary real estate numbers. Is it still affordable? Well, yes, it is. And we had a huge interest rate announcement today. These are all things we talk about with our good friend and broker owner, Darren Langille, right after this. Here we are, my friends, back with our favorite broker owner from Calgary, Darren Langille. How are you, my man?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
Glad to be back again.
Glad to be back. Meaning you took a little time away and time away from the market, time away enjoying your family. That's always important. Always good to take time out. But when you take time out, funny things happen sometimes in the market. I know the last couple of weeks, it's definitely here in Toronto, and I know in Calgary, you've seen. Can we call it more of the same as we've been trending along the last several months that we've been doing videos here?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I start to sound like a broken record, but hopefully not. I give context and maybe changes or adjusts. But yeah, the story you and I have been building around Calgary's market has been May was better than last May, which was like a surprise, right? It was good, but it was insane. June was better than last June, which also was like, okay, the momentum's continuing. So in here, we're sitting, you and I are talking now halfway through July, and July's numbers from a sales perspective are again ahead of last July's. So we're coming on almost a full quarter here of growth in comparison to what was such a great year. So yeah, the momentum here is strong. There's no end in sight, and you and I can unpack why I believe that, and go from there. But yeah, it's like you said, more of the same.
Yeah. And don't worry, folks, we are going to unpack that. I'm not going to let them off lightly. And I know a lot of our viewers and people that you and I talk to on a daily basis, the Bank of Canada does things to impact the market and certainly is impacted here in Toronto. However, we're going to touch on this, and we're going to end with the interest rate announcement that happened today, July 12th, and of course, another 25 basis points. But let's talk about some of the other things. That's a big piece of the puzzle. Let's talk about some of the fundamentals that require a moving market. And of course, one of those is migration. And again, not to be that broken record, but Alberta continues to lead in net migration, and a number of other things. Let's kind of unpack that for a bit.
Yeah, I mean this story, the most recent stat is from January 1st to March 31st, right? That was the most recent big data amalgamation. We just finished Q2, so you'll watch whoever's doing all this data analysis is going to put out the Q2 version of this, right? But yeah, there was international net migration to Alberta in Q1 of 36,000 people net. Never had that level, even back in the boom and bust days. It's never happened. And then we had, of course, a net interprovincial migration. And again, net meaning like when you take the ins and outs, that's the what's left over, again, was a huge number. And it's coming a lot from Ontario, but it's coming from everywhere. That built in Q1. The story yet to be released is that also happened in Q2, but it's also been happening for like 2 and 3 years, right? Like there was a silent story building that Alberta felt, but that is actually the people that are pushing the buyer demand into the market right now, right? As you know, people travel from other parts of the world and other parts of the province, and they're not all jumping into the purchase, right? Because that's a big move. A lot of them get into the rental pool, and you and I know Don Campbell, right? The rental rates raise first, which they do. That drove tightening in the rental. And then they eventually get acquainted, get their jobs, right? Because it takes a while to find placement and reacclimate to a new market. And then they enter the job pool, they enter the purchase ability. And that's the wave that's happening now and last year. But this is something that's been building for a while and will continue to have its long tail build as well. And that's a lot of the thing when people talk about a boom and bust in Alberta, possibility is just so much full of bull because there's just long tail level of demand that is even yet to hit the market and won't hit the market for years from now. And but yet we're still having what we talked about, record prices at still a bargain. So
yeah. And the interesting thing too here is, and we talk about the valuations of homes and that net migration and even migration into Canada, and of course the home price index and how that affects, or how Calgary reflects upon that. And I'll give you let me set this up with the fact that here I am in Ontario, or I'm in Toronto, and we'll just call it the average price is 1.3 million. And of course we can get very detailed on that. But if I come to Calgary, and if I sell my home here and come to Calgary, my buying ability is far greater than those that live in Calgary for the last 30, 40 years, right? Like that's the
Oh yeah.
mindset. And we always say, well, when immigrants come into Canada or they come into our areas, they think this is a bargain. Well,
Hmm.
from the outset, I would look at Calgary as a bargain coming from Toronto, right? Let's get into the weeds of that a little bit. Explain that a little bit from your perspective.
Well, yeah, we've talked about Alberta. I mean, Alberta and specifically Calgary having the best prices ever. But we're doing this on the backs of like 2 to 4% increase year over year. There's no word of there's no bubble there. Like that's just fundamental growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys also had what? What was your year over year price growth in Toronto?
Oh, we
It's a couple.
probably, yeah, we were hitting the double digits, which is unsustainable, right?
So, and if we went from today back a year, have your prices increased year over year a little bit?
We're probably sitting at about even right now at
Okay.
day to day. However, if you looked at our top end of in February, it would have been about another 9%, which is still crazy number, right?
So yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say is while Alberta's the talk of the town because it's a healthy growth, our year over year figures are only still a couple percent. That's why, but yet you guys had something similar. So the affordability of Calgary, which is way down here, to which is our average sale prices is under 6, right? Like we're in the mid fives for an average benchmark price versus yours at 1.3. We're not actually growing and catching up to you guys at all.
Right.
That gap is still there and is as big as ever, which means that affordability has continued despite all of this talk about Alberta, 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 and your talk of, whoa, we might be adjusting a bit. But we're finally just starting to grow a little bit. And like I keep saying, the gap is not closing. The affordability gap hasn't gotten out of whack here in Alberta.
Yeah.
The housing price index states, the most recent numbers anyways, that the percentage of somebody's income going to housing in Alberta is 41%.
Hmm.
In Toronto, it's 85%.
Yeah. I was going to say double.
In
Exactly.
Vancouver, it's over 90%. So unless we start to go 10, 15% year over year for like a decade and you guys do nothing, we're not going to catch up. You know what I mean? So that affordability gap is staying there for a while because I don't think we'll ever get anywhere near there. And we don't need to. There's no
No,
reason for us to go there, which just says, you know what? It will be a place if you want to change and change that kind of like how much money you have to spend on housing if you want to own housing is just going to stay more affordable here. Our incomes are about the same and we actually net out more because of our
yeah,
tax rate. So
absolutely. And it's all about the scale of an economy in a sense where if you just use the simple math as if we have well, let's do really simple. Let's just like really simple. If we just call our valuations at a million, like 1% on a million is obviously 10,000. 1% on 600,000 is only 6,000. So again, that takes time. If we both
mhm.
increase 1% a year, we're going to grow still exponentially faster, which means the affordability gets crunched and crunched and crunched and crunched, and yet you have all this extra headroom. Right? That's
That's right.
that's the point Darren and I are trying to get across
Yeah.
here, right? we, I don't know if
The
we can
gap
come up
is
with
so
different
far.
analogies. Yeah.
Totally. Like the gap is just so far out of whack between the two majors, right? You guys, Vancouver, and us.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It just continues to paint the affordability price
Yeah.
tag,
Yeah.
why people will find their place here. Right. And that does trickle down to the rental side too. Again, it is gotten more expensive on the rental. I had a tenant reach out to me that in 2 years her rent went up by 800. Not happy about it, and the landlords are now saying, "Well, I deserve this now." right? And they're going for it, and it's not making people happy, but uh, it was just, it had to happen, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
rates were pretty low, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me throw a little bit of a curveball. How does Calgary and Edmonton, how do they kind of line up with each other with valuations and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so if you think of, like, there's always the hotbed, right? Calgary will it's got the biggest draw on it,
Mm.
right? So while we're having a really, really, really tight market, Alberta's having, I mean, Edmonton's having a good market, but when you talk to any of the realtors there, it's like, it's just nowhere near the pace we're talking about,
I
right?
see.
It's good, it's healthy, but it's not like what we have. Then you go further up to the Fort Macs and to the Grand Prairies, and again, same thing. There is inventory crisis everywhere, but the demand side is not the same, and then that means the year over year price growth is not happening the same as Calgary,
Yeah.
and that's just so their average affordability. I don't know exactly, but I would say 80 to 100,000 less than us if I were to just throw that out as a guess.
Sure.
So it is more affordable. Um, it's driven more by the government, right? It's more like all the government is there, a lot of that, and then the blue collar manufacturing and stuff that comes and feeds the oil and gas market. Little less C-suite and corporate. So
Right. 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 Good stuff. Good stuff. So I guess we should talk about the not so pink elephant in the room and then the interest rate announcement. Uh, did you feel that it was coming today anyways? Even, what was your gut kind of telling you?
we're all so sick of this story, right? But we know
Yeah.
it's coming. It's just the fact everybody keeps buying stuff, right? We're all pushing ahead and moving things forward despite these adjustments that the feds are making. But again, back to us again, looking inside, we just have ability to service that extra debt. We don't want it. Nobody wants this extra debt.
Right.
But our ability here, because again, the percentage of the biggest part of our costs, housing, is not as big of a piece of our overall situation as in like your market. So again, we weather the storm better, because we just have more grace,
Yeah.
in as far as our household abilities to service it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. I think most of us know that this was going to be here for a while, and now they're telling us that we're into 2025. So again, it is what it is, what it is.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. Like I know here it's definitely going to squeeze a hand. Well, like everywhere, I shouldn't say here, across Canada, it's going to squeeze those buyers that have been sitting on the fence and maybe push them into rental, for another year or two into 2025. The weird ripple effect too is take a person like myself who signed a mortgage 3 years ago, which means my interest rate is in the twos. So I'm really
Mhm.
happy knowing that in 2 years from now, I'm probably in the fours, somewhere around there, right? Uh,
Yeah,
but I actually, unless there's a good opportunity for the majority of people, I'd be silly to go out and buy a home today, right? So those are the kind of the people that kind of signed a mortgage, 2 or 3 years ago, that are on that 5 year term. So that's going to shrink our selling market down a bit, and of course the buying market. That's kind of that strange ripple effect, and there's many ripple effects and so forth. But from my perspective, if I'm thinking about buying a bigger house, maybe I can wait 2 years or three, not because of the interest rate is so much higher than what I'm accustomed to, right? What I budgeted for.
100%. You're exactly right. The future inventory coming to market is going to be completely hampered, right? Why would we trade up when they're in the interest rate environment? Why would we laterally move if it's going to cost me a break mortgage or anything and have a blend and extend that costs me more at all? Many of
Yeah.
us will just pause, which is not great, which won't add to the inventory if the net migration to Canada as a whole continues to flood in, which, as you know, under Trudeau will keep flogging into us, and we will have incredible growth rates that will need housing. So we're not going to get it as a result of any of these changes, right? Like you said, I'll hang on to my home. I don't
Hmm.
need the upgrade, but I'll maybe renovate the thing instead of moving.
Yeah.
Um, I know in Alberta, we have the lowest age population in the country.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So
Talk to us about that. Yeah.
So I see that as okay. As people come in and they settle into the rental pool, then they purchase, right? Then they get into the purchase environment. If you're just setting up roots for the first time in this environment of high rates, you don't expect any of that inventory to come back anywhere anytime soon. Because if I'm a new homeowner with a new family and the costs of running all of that, inflation and everything, when 5 and 7 years comes up, when I would typically move, I'm probably not going to, because the rates will be so high. And how much more can we truly afford? So I don't think that future inventory is even coming. Alberta as well, we've got the youngest 65 and older demographic. So again, as they wind up their careers, they don't have extra money. So they're going to sit on their asset and they're just going to hold it. And they're the youngest group of 65 and older. So they're the ones that typically have the best homes, right? The highest priced homes, the ones that have been built and then saved and paid off. Again, they're not going to liquidate. So I don't think that we're going to see any kind of like push on inventory in your market, in my market, for a long time because of this environment. So,
Yeah.
um,
So that, I mean, then that brings up that interesting point. If we go back to, okay, what's the ripple effect? Well, the ripple effect in a sense is if there's less homes coming to market, there will still always be buyers, and especially in the Calgary area because of all the, the net migration, the migration and all the things that we just talked about, there's going to be a demand for homes, which continues to be that supply. We need that supply chain in a sense to have certain numbers every year. And I know in Toronto what it needs to be, and I'm sure you do in Calgary, just for simple turnover, right? So the ebb and flow of the market will always be the ebb and flow of the market. There's always turnover regardless. And I see in your market in the coming years, that number has to increase, or you're going to see
It's just
perhaps
going to
some,
stay tight. It's just going
yeah,
to stay tight. And maybe we have some 20% year over year price growth as a result. If this inventory stays off the fence and the buyer demand continues to come and your markets stay as expensive as they are, there will have to be some knee jerk upswings, right? There's realtors in our market that think 50% year over year is not out of line, right? Now that's right. Just because we're down at 3,400 active listings last year, that was 5,400. That's a big drop. And our demand is just as high. And I've already shown you it's higher. So, and if you believe me at all that this might continue for 2, 3, 4 years because of that wave that was already here, and then we'll start to purchase as they get stabilized. You mean that could be where Calgary goes, which is wild to consider. Now, are we trying to list a lot? Yeah, we are
sure.
actually right up near record high listings, new listings, but the absorption is just getting swallowed up, right?
Yeah.
Because the demand is so high. Even CMHC reported that across Canada, we're down in new builds, but in Alberta, we're way up. We're way up. So again, we're
Interesting.
trying to list more homes. We are listing more homes, and the agents begging for more properties have to stop begging because I don't think more could physically come.
Is
Right?
that
We're
right?
already at record resale, new, and record in almost top end of new housing. So this is probably as good as it gets, and we shouldn't be expecting to get a whole big God gift of more.
Yeah. Yeah. And people will say, well, excuse me, why aren't some of the other markets seeing this? Like, perhaps as we move along, why isn't Winnipeg seeing this? Or if we go to the East Coast, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, those areas, it's also the way of life in Alberta. You have so much more to offer apart from some of the financial costs. Real estate is probably a third, or about a third higher there than say in Nova Scotia. Probably more in most cases, but from the tax benefit, that quality of life, like those are the
Yeah, I mean,
things that people look for nowadays, right?
we're not on a coast, right? We're not Toronto in the sense of like it's what people think of as Canada, but it does have a lot on the go. The
Yeah.
affordable housing, the abundant jobs. Like people talk about the unemployment rate being slightly higher than Canada, but well, shit. I mean, we've just had so many people come. Give them a minute to then get stabilized, jobs to start, new businesses to kick in, employment to start. But when we talk a little higher, we're talking like 0.2% higher. It's
Yeah.
like, to me, that's flat. Like we're
Yeah.
the same as you guys, right? And it's just like, that's not even a question to the people to bring that stuff up. But yeah, there is a lot to do with lifestyle here. The tax situation will always be better,
Yep.
right? Just what Albertans do. It's like Texas and Vegas and Florida, not quite as good as those, but it is strong for that benefit. I don't think anybody's ever cut that Alberta Advantage away.
No. And quite frankly, people here so funny. When you're in, I guess when right? Uh, I will say Torontonians are just starting to realize, wait a minute, it's costing me so much just to live here in Ontario. I can go to Alberta for, pennies on the dollar in a sense. That's their mindset. It's kind of like they're just rediscovering some of the opportunities. And as I have conversations with people like that, I just gotta chuckle to myself, like, man, you gotta educate yourself. Canada has a lot to offer. It's just not Toronto, right?
Yeah,
Alberta
I mean,
has tremendous amount of stuff to offer.
and it's not a solution for all. Like, it's a lot to pick up and move cross country. It's not as much to just purchase an investment and hire a company to hold it. That's why you see so much investment money flogging in pretty easily. And we see it from the property management side as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving across country is a major deal. So I don't hold any animosity towards like the GTA saying I would never go to Alberta. Well, geez, I don't know if I could consider going 4,000 kilometers away either, right? Um, it's not an easy move. So I can empathize with that all day
Sure.
long.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure. Yeah. Very good, my friends. Lots of good stuff. Yeah, Alberta may be or Calgary may be in their hottest market, but as you said, it's still affordable, still attainable. Things are still looking very promising for local buyers there.
302,000 was the average condo price recorded, and that's our highest ever. 302 is the average for condo, right? Detached homes, 685 for a
Mm,
detached, right? Semis, 613. And then there's the row home market, 400K flat. Like, that's where we sit today. So again, that you put that in context pretty quick and you realize, oh, okay, this isn't BS. This is like, these are real value differences, right? So
that's fantastic. I love it. I love it. All right, my friend. How do people get a hold of you?
just hit us up. Instagram is where I would spend a few moments a day. Otherwise, on my email at just Darren@redlinerealestate.ca.
There you have it, my friends. So for Darren and for all of Calgary, we always love checking it in. We'll see everybody on the next video. Goodbye for now.
See you guys.